So tonight we are pleased to have with us Dan Howard with a program titled A Day on the Iowa Traction, featuring photos and videos from his recent visit to Mason City, Iowa, home to the last remaining electric traction freight railroad in the United States. A retired civil engineer living in the Mid-Hudson Valley region of New York State, Dan keeps busy by serving as a conductor and railroad official with the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum. He's president of the West Shore Model Railroad Club, whose modular HO scale layout travels to the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show at the Big E. And he also keeps busy operating and maintaining the Clermont division, his 200 plus square foot proto freelance HO model railroad empire that depicts parts of the New Haven, New York Central, and Boston, Maine railroads in eastern New York and western Massachusetts in the late 1950s and early 1960s. An avid rail enthusiast and photojournalist, Dan has over 100 bylines and photo credits in numerous rail-related print and electronically published media, including Trains Magazine, Railfan and Railroad, Passenger Train Journal, the New York Central Historical Society's Central Headlight and Modeler magazines, and Rail Pace, as well as our own Callboy. And in fact, there's a feature in the current Callboy, which was mailed a couple days ago, follows some of the timeline of tonight's program. So Dan, welcome back to Mass Bay RE, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Dave. Greetings. Thank you for having me back. So, A Day on the Iowa Traction Railroad. This is June 2023. Made a trip out there with a fellow engineer from the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum. And we had to get there and back, so I got a few extra pictures. Our first stop was in Ohio, and we rode up Cuyahoga Valley. Nice FA unit on each end of the train. A few days later, we made our way out to Fort Madison, Iowa. Top right, that is the BNSF toll bridge. The lower level is a double track rail bridge, and the top level is a 2-lane vehicle highway. And the very next day, the bottom photo there, over a 6-hour period, we had 21 trains come by. Wonderful place, great weather. Getting a little closer to our destination, we're going through Waterloo, Iowa. We pick up some information, some chatter on the radio. We hop off the highway and we find Bryant Yard. And the Iowa Northern Railway was running some equipment through the yard. Fantastic little stop. And then the big cheese, Mason City. So we're looking at a map of Iowa. And down in the lower right, Burlington, just below that is Fort Madison. And going up a little bit right of center, Waterloo, that's where the Iowa Northern was. And here's Mason City in northern central Iowa. And here we have the Iowa Traction. It's about 5 miles long, pretty much due straight. Clear Lake is where their yard is. And then at the east end, they have an interchange with CPKC, and then another interchange with Union Pacific. So we got up bright and early for retirees. It's a little after 7 o'clock in the morning. We're heading down 19th Street. We saw one unit kind of doing some switching. We continued a little further west. We came across this crew working with Unit 50. They're doing some switching. He's changing ends at this point. That's why 2 poles are up. So he was doing some switching, not going too far. So we went back east a little bit and found the crew with locomotive 54. These locomotives are all early 1920s, so these are about 100 years old. We saw 3 of them that day in service, which I believe is their full roster. So 54 was doing a little bit of switching. With his switching done, it was time to head to interchange, and so we chased this train. As you can see, 19th Street parallels the line pretty much the whole way. It's an easy chase. They run at restricted speed, so you can get shots and videos, move ahead, and get them at the next spot. It's wonderful. So we go a little further east, came over the hill, got some more shots. We'll be showing videos later after the slideshow's done. And here's a broadside These are Baldwin steeple cab locomotives. And you can see they actually use trolley wheels, not shoes. So we let that one head off towards interchange, and we went back to where the crew with 50 was. And they were done shifting cars on one end, then he came down the other end and he's getting his train together. We had to wait until the other crew came back so he could take his train down to interchange. We had a lovely chat with this engineer. He stepped off the locomotive and came down to us at the grade crossing, chatted with us for about 20 minutes. So here's the meet. 54 is coming back from interchange and heading down to their yard. If you look the left side at the bottom, that's the tail end of the train heading over the hill. And the crew with locomotive 50 is starting to head east. So we scooted ahead a little bit. We caught the train coming up over the hill. Down the ways a little more, the next crossing. And as that one was heading towards interchange, we looked over, and across the street, there's a side track that goes into the AGP facility. We saw the pole was up on 51. So we stopped there. They were coming out with cars. And you'll see more later in the video, because there's some video and some picture, and not easy to get both at the same time. So they had gone off to interchange, and now they're coming back to the AGP plant to pick up more cars to take to interchange. So they've collected another set of cars, and they're heading out and crossing over 19th Street. So we followed this train up to the interchange, place called Rorick Park, which is actually a city park. And there are some wonderful places we could park and catch the action. Now we're coming back. They've collected cars, and I'll show you the video later. They do a gravity drop to get around the train. And so now they're doing a shove move with the cars inbound to AGP. And there's Peter out there taking video as well. So they've now come past us, and they're shoving the cars into the plant. With that, they came back, pulled the pole, and they took a lunch break, so we did too. So after lunch, this is literally across the street from the AGP plant. We set up there, and we caught 50 coming east over the Chelsea Creek. Beautiful little photo location there. They went off to interchange. And then when they came back and grabbed another train to head to interchange, it was too much tonnage for them. So 51 came out to actually shove on the back end of the train. The green pickup there is a company truck. They had a lot of people roving around, helping each other, moving the crews around. It's a real team effort. So here's a broadside of 51 coming back west with a CP high rail truck in the foreground. So here's 51 coming back east again with more cars for interchange. Once past us, continuing on. And we followed this crew up to the interchange up at Rorick Park. By this point, they had run around their train, and they're shoving cars further up into the interchange. This was a home-built snowplow. The locomotive engineer had told us it was up here, and they shoved it up here a number of years back. I think he said it had been about 5 or 7 years they hadn't used it. But it did have a complete air brake system. So the crew was done with their switching at Rorick Park. They pulled down. I believe at this point they pulled the pole on this one and parked it. They generally leave the power wherever they finish at the end of the day. They don't bring it all back to the other end at the shop. And so the day before, we actually took a ride down and kind of scouted things out to see where things were parked. We knew where to kind of start on the day. So with that, we went back out on the line, and we caught the crew with 50 coming west. And so we did some photo and video at a number of locations. What I like about this photo, if you look into the cab, you can see the engineer pulling the cord for the horn. So we're about 2/3 of the way down the line or so, and they're going to shove those cars into the siding. So he's got the pole up the other way, getting ready for the shove move. And this is interesting. There's no overhead electrical frog, and so they have to swing the pole over on the fly. So on the left, you can see that little spark at the end. He's pulling the trolley wheel off the line. The middle photo, he's swinging it over. And then the photo on the right, he's dropped the trolley wheel up onto the overhead for the siding. And coming out was the same deal. On the left, he's pulling the pole. And on the right, he's dropped the wheel up on the pole. You can see where it's pushed the overhead up just a little bit. And with that, it was now about 1:30, 1:45 in the afternoon, and they pulled the pole and called it a day. It was brutally hot out. That's not the end of the story, because we did have to come home. And we were fortunate enough to see 3 locomotives under steam and ride behind 2 of them. We were coming back east, and Peter had not been to the Illinois Rail Museum. And so we made an audible and spent a day there. And that photo of shade number 5, that's the first thing we saw when we arrived that day. And then later in the day, we did ride behind 1630. And then later on in the trip, we did the all-day excursion behind 765 from Indiana up into Michigan. And that photo is from the second run by that they did, I think. And then we spent part of an afternoon at the Marion, Ohio Tower, which was a very pleasant time. And CSX and Norfolk Southern were generous with some trains that came through. So with that, we're going to swap over and start some videos. So this was that first train that we chased going to interchange. Comes our Darwin Award candidate.
He did. That first train coming back, the other one that's getting ready to go out.
these are empties coming in. This one locomotive could not pull all of these if they were full. We are at the AGP plant, and they're going to take a cut of cars out to interchange. So here's the gravity drop. They've come back from interchange. They've brought the locomotive over onto the spur. They've thrown the switch for the main. They're using gravity to bring the cars past the switch.
Dan, is there a crew member riding those cars, winding up the brake, or?
Yes. Give the stop signal there. That was releasing the handbrake. do have a crew member out in the road flagging traffic. Right. There is an eastbound coming over the Wesley Creek. That just went by was the one they added the locomotive to help push it to interchange. Is our day on the Iowa traction.
Okay, Dan, thanks a lot. Short and sweet, a fascinating little railroad. We have a few questions and comments in the chat. This question: did you go to the Iowa Trolley Park in Clear Lake?
We didn't. I didn't know it was there. I did a lot of research, but missed that one.
And
I saw about it afterwards. Always the case.
And Alan from Pigeon Cove asks, what is the traffic in the tank and covered hopper cars? What are they?
I have no idea.
No idea what they're moving.
There was a Chevron location. I don't know if it was petroleum or chemicals. Yeah, I don't know that level of detail on the railroad.
Then we have a question. It says, I think I counted 15 empties earlier. How many loads did you see handled by a single electric locomotive?
Single, maybe 6, 5 or 6, like that last one that came west.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell when it was going up the hill, the headlight was dimming because they only have one. They have a couple of circuits, but most of the main line is one circuit, and you're running on DC. So.
One of the things I was impressed with is how quickly the crew members were able to raise and drop the poles, and how accurate they were in hitting the target on the first try.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think at this point, I think we'll close the recorded part of the program by, I'll just repeat a comment from one of our viewers. The little engine that could. Thank you. Great program. So Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm going to stop the recording.